Hi, I'm Jen, the founder of Checkpoint, and this is the Checkpoint series where we tackle mental health issues using the power of video games. But to do that, you need to know how to represent mental illness in those games themselves. Unfortunately, we're still not very good at that. A recent study showed that just under a quarter of characters in top-selling games were overtly stated to have a mental illness, and just under half exhibited symptoms in some way. But that was almost always psychopathy and homicidality. So, what's the benefit of representing mental illness well in games? In any story, in fact. Reducing stigma. We have studies which show that public opinion changes depending on what they see in the media and on screen. We also know that public awareness improves when issues are represented accurately and fairly. With mental illness, we have the power to actually change the perception of our audience with the way that we portray the psychology of our characters. Mental illness is nothing to be scared of or to shy away from. The huge stigma society has against it is slowly being changed the more we talk about it and the more openly we acknowledge it. Games are lagging way behind on this front. Reaching out to sufferers. 97% of the population interact with games in some way. This means they carry an enormous power, and with great power comes great responsibility. Representing mental illness properly actually helps people who are suffering to recognise their own struggles in another, and it can provide them with the courage to reach out and ask for help, or even directly give them the tools to do that. Believable characters. No one believes you when you use the Deus Ex Machina of, well, none of this was real because the person was psychotic all along, ooh! It's also tired and overused and a little cheap. Help people relate to your characters. Get your players more engrossed in the game by making them more emotive, more realistic and believable. You don't need to give them a diagnosable mental illness to understand that humans have strengths and weaknesses. And if your narrative revolves around character development and human interaction, then it's important to take into account the psychology and mindset of each individual. Following on from that, it actually makes your game better to play if you use these things correctly. If that's, of course, the sort of game you're making, and if you're here, I assume it is. For example, why are so many horror games set in asylums? And what does that actually add? It's scary because mental illness is scary, right? People are unpredictable and violent, apparently. I mean, what a fantastic way to scare people into never getting help for their very real mental health issues. I've worked in mental health wards for years, and you'd be amazed at how boring they can be. Tropes like this make me sad. Actually, here's a few more terrible tropes while I'm at it. He's so evil, he's psychotic or something. Psychopathy is not psychosis. The misunderstanding and misuse of these two words is so damaging to sufferers of mental illness. Psychopaths are essentially bad people in the eyes of society. There's some professional contention about the exact definition of psychopathy, but what is agreed is that these are people who have a specific combination of low empathy, large ego, and disinhibition. In other words, they think a lot of themselves and are capable of doing anything to get what they want, without caring what happens to others. While not all psychopaths harm people, it's certainly easier for them to do so. They know the difference between right and wrong, and they're between 20 and 25 times more likely to commit a crime if it will benefit them. They are very overrepresented in the prison population. These are scary people. Psychopaths are not mentally ill. That's their personality, and it's unlikely they'll change. Psychosis is totally different. It's a specific state of mind caused by illness, which interferes with someone's ability to tell what's real and what isn't real. They may have hallucinations, such as hearing voices when no one's around, or delusions, which is a fixed and false belief, like, for example, that they're an alien. Their thinking can get confused, and they usually don't know that they're unwell. These people do sometimes commit crimes, but the prevalence of this is hugely overrepresented in the media. In fact, people who are suffering psychosis are 10 times more likely to be a victim of crime than to commit one. That's why we need to stop mislabeling them as evil or being afraid of them and using them as a horror mechanic. These are vulnerable human beings who need care, not adversity. This is closely tied to this trope. The voices made me do it. It's that scene where you realise the antagonist is doing all of their evil shenanigans because the voices in their head told them to. It's unoriginal and a bit boring, effective at nothing except perpetuating an awful stereotype. Insane equals dangerous. This leads to fear of people suffering, them being exploited and even harmed, when they don't actually pose any threat. So, let's get better. Join us for part 2, where we'll be talking about how to do just that. And thank you for watching. Remember, you can join our growing community with your Checkpoint membership to access merchandise, giveaways, and meetups at conventions. Plus, there's plenty more information about the world of mental health on our website, checkpoint.org.au. This show would never have been possible without the help of all the people and companies you see here. Thank you so much. And as always, stay safe, and we'll see you next time.